Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inside the Birds NFL Weekly Preview Show. I am Geoff Mosher, and this is year two of our show. I did the show last year, got some really good feedback. People enjoy the breakdowns, the matchups. Yes, I give the spread for each game, and at the end, I'll make my three picks. But at the end of the day, this is more of a matchup show. I like to go into the schemes, the coaching advantages or disadvantages, the on-field schematics and matchups that are going to make a difference each week in the game. So I look forward to doing it. And away we go here with year two of the show, but week one of the 2025 NFL season. Obviously, two games already have been played. The Eagles opened Thursday night against the Cowboys. I was there. That, to me, the more I've thought about that game, it is such a vintage Eagles game. They did not have their A-plus game, and they won anyway. There's not a lot of teams talented enough to be able to win when they don't play their A-plus game, especially against a division rival. But the Eagles have trademarked winning this way, especially in the regular season. There are plenty of examples of Eagles regular season wins that didn't pass the eye test or the smell test, or you came away feeling that there's flaws or there's things to work on. And there are. It is week one. And remember, this team is replacing half of its defense. And obviously, a couple of the offensive weapons like A.J. Brown missed a lot of training camp time. So it was not a well-oiled machine to begin with. But there were some really, really good positives. I thought Jahad Campbell played really well as a rookie. Makuba got in there. Jahan Dotson, you saw him with the big catch to stretch the field there as a guy who's building a rapport with Jalen Hurts. So they'll go off to week two and play the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost. They are under 500. When's the last time you could say that about the Kansas City Chiefs? But it should be a good game, week two out there in Kansas City. We'll get to them in a second. You know, I don't like to put too much into week one. Especially if you're just not sure about a team. I used to call week one, if you heard my shows with Adam Kaplan, our Inside the Birds shows, when we talk about the NFL, week one is the biggest con job. I can go and show you games from week one, some ridiculous outcomes where teams that never should have won beat teams that at the end of the year are in the playoffs or winning the Super Bowl, things like that. It's a nature of the beast of week one where there's new coaches, new schemes, new players, and sometimes you're not always as prepared as you think you should be. And so you'll see some week one upsets. And I bring that up because I came away from Eagles Cowboys game thinking maybe Dallas is a little better than we think. I thought their interior offensive line played really well, and it should. I mean, you've got the rookie Booker from Alabama there. You got Tyler Smith. You got a good center. So I thought the interior O-line did a nice job, and I'm taking into account they didn't have to face Jalen Carter. He obviously got suspended for spitting. So I really want to see it more from the Cowboys going into week two and beyond to see if they can be a lot better than they were last year. There's no question they have talent. I was a little surprised by, I guess, how effective their secondary was with guys who missed a lot of time and weren't even certain back in training camp to play in week one. Trevon Diggs being an example. Obviously, Deron Bland got out there. I thought their secondary played fairly decently. And I don't know if that was just the Eagles being off a little in the pass game, as they tend to be, until the playoffs come around, and then all of a sudden they're a juggernaut. But or if that was the Cowboys, who again they've got some talent. They have a good defensive coordinator in Matt Eberflus, who's done this job before, knows the league really well. Knew Nick Sirianni because he coached with him in Indianapolis. So I don't know if what we saw from the Cowboys was more of a right time, right place, or if with George Pickens and with a healthy Dak and CeeDee Lamb and what they do have on defense, and they've got some young pass rushers who will come along, a lot of second-round picks. So, yes, they'll miss Micah Parsons, but I guess I'm wondering, can the Cowboys be a little more competitive than maybe people think? I think the prevailing notion going into the game was that the Eagles would win, not only because they're better, but because they had a drastically better roster than the Cowboys, who are a bad team, bad organization. Some of that stuff on about Jones is true. I had the Cowboys 14th in my power rankings on Philly Voice. You can go to phillyvoice.com to check out my NFL power rankings. And I felt I was a little bit higher on them than most because I do think they have good talent at good positions, important positions, if these guys are healthy. I probably gave them a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt at 14, but after 1 week, they at least in this matchup, maybe I was not wrong. Maybe I'm not too high on them. Maybe that's where they belong, and then we'll see going forward if they can carry it on. Chiefs Chargers again. Don't try to make too much of Week 1, but the Chiefs offense to me is problematic. They don't have Rasheed Rice for 6 weeks. All right, Xavier Worthy leaves the game really early, and that basically leaves them again very kind of underwhelming with their weapons. They have Pacheco, who's a good contact running back, but he's not an Andy Reid running back that we think of when we think of like Brian Westbrook or Shady McCoy, or when he first got to Kansas City. I think he had Jamal Charles for a year. Pacheco's a grinder, bulldozer. Really, Kareem Hunt is their more multi-faceted back, but he's at this age, he's not going to touch the ball, more than 5 to 10 times a game. And then you look at the wide receiver group, without Rice and with Worthy out of the game. I mean, Hollywood Brown got 16 targets. He's not that kind of receiver, but he only caught 10 balls for 99 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster, 5 catches, 55 yards. This is a short passing game. And Patrick Mahomes has really struggled to drive the ball over the last few years. If you go back to the Super Bowl, yes, he threw the really long touchdown on Xavier Worthy when the game was completely out of hand. But a couple of times he had a chance to go deep, and he just wouldn't let the ball go. And I don't know if he's sort of reached that stage of his career where he doesn't trust his receivers, because ever since losing Tyreek Hill, he may not have had the most dynamic outside playmaker. But year after year, he gradually becomes more surgical, but they've lost that deep ball element that made the Chiefs so prolific at one point. And I'm still not sure they're fixed on the offensive line. The Super Bowl was sort of a big it was a little bit of a misconception for people down on the Chiefs, because they were playing their left guard Joe Tooney at left tackle, and they were playing a third stringer at left guard because of injuries and because they had not developed some offensive linemen. It's not like that's who the Chiefs typically are. They weren't like that. They went 15-1 for a reason last year. Tooney was a great left guard, but he's with the Bears now. So they redid the line. They got the rookie Simmons from Ohio State at left tackle, and they got the second-round pick from a couple years ago who couldn't get on the field from BYU out there at left guard. And I'm just not sure that that's fixed. Kingsley Suamataia, I believe, is the how do you pronounce it, the left guard's name. So you got a rookie and a second-year guy on the left side of the line. Is it any surprise that Mahomes was running all game, 6 rushes, 57 yards, ran for a touchdown? No, it is not. Outside of 3 big plays, he had a 49-yarder to Hollywood Brown. You had the Kelsey cut touchdown, obviously, and big play he made on a corner out to Tyquan Thornton. Outside of that, it's a dink and dunk offense. And if they're not going to have Xavier Worthy and without Rasheed Rice, I think that just don't have the horses on offense for Patrick Mahomes. I still think Mahomes is great, and they were in the game, right? I mean, they were down to the end, and then the Chargers put it away in the fourth quarter, and good for them, because the Chargers have been knocking at the Chiefs' door last 2 years. I don't have the results in front of me, but I do recall that each game between the 2 games between them last year were very close, and it was games that the Chiefs would pull out at the end, like the Chiefs always do. The Chiefs trademarked pulling out games last year in the fourth quarter, but you could tell that the Chargers were on a come up. You could tell that they have built themselves. I still think they're lacking a little bit in the playmaker department. It was nice to see Quentin Johnston catch some balls. I think he did that last year. He had a couple touchdowns early on, made you think he was going to be a real factor. But he's one of those guys who's a factor one day and then not a factor in the next game. So I don't know. We'll see. about the Chargers. But yeah, the Chiefs beat them 17-10 in the first game and 19-17 in the second game. So it was kind of interesting. This was a little bit more of a high scoring affair compared to when these two teams typically meet. But the Chargers are 1-0, off to a good start, trying to make a push here under Jim Harbaugh, get back into the playoffs, make some noise this time. And the Chiefs, I think it's going to be a little bit tough sledding for them early on until they get the left side of the line acclimated and until Rashee Rice, obviously out 5 more games till he comes back. They don't have the depth offensively to be able to lose guys like Worthy earlier in a game and then be able to come out and go to toe with some really good teams. So it didn't surprise me that they lost that game. However, I wouldn't bet on the Chiefs to completely implode here. They are still the Chiefs, and I still think their game against the Eagles at Arrowhead next week will be a really good game. Obviously, a rematch of the Super Bowl. All right, I'm going to get into the 1 o'clock games, 4 o'clock games, the night games. I just want to say that when going through this slate, it surprised me how much in these week 1 games that I thought some of these matchups will be critically determined by the play of rookies. I don't know what it is about the last year's or this past draft, but it produced a lot of rookies who are going to either make or break, depending on how they play, their team. And they're going to be a big part of whether their team is successful and really takes a next step or not. At least that's just the way it felt to me as I was going through each one of these games. So let's start with the first game, Bucks at Falcons. The Bucks are 1.5 point favorites over the Falcons. Now, this game is fascinating to me because last year the Tampa Bay Bucks won the division despite losing twice to the Atlanta Falcons. They lost to them in week 5, 36-30, and then they lost to them in week 8, 31-26. So they could not figure out a way to beat the Falcons. And of course, we all know that they had a big win over the Eagles. So they're kind of strange in that they kicked the crap out of the Eagles, then went and lost to the Falcons and lost to the Falcons again. And they had some weird losses last year for a team that won the NFC South. They lost to a San Francisco team that wasn't very good. They did go toe-to-toe against some teams. They lost to the Ravens last year. They lost to the Chiefs, but both were pretty good games. But they lost to the Cowboys, which is just sort of shocking to me last year. So this Bucks team is very good. They obviously won the division last year. I think a lot of teams have them as a top 4 team in the NFC. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I want to see them be a little more consistent. I'm concerned about them losing their offensive coordinator for the 3rd straight year. I thought Liam Cohen did an unbelievable job with Baker Mayfield after Dave Canales the year before had done a really good job unlocking Baker Mayfield. And now they're on to a new offensive coordinator, Josh Grizzard. He was with the team already. He was their pass game coordinator, but he hasn't been with the Bucks for a long time. He's mostly from the Dolphins. So he probably has that Mike McDaniel, which is tree in him, which is really a branch of the Kyle Shanahan tree. So it'll be very interesting to see if there's some kind of Shanahan-ish influence on the Bucks offense. But if I were Josh Grizzard and I just spent a year as the pass game coordinator under Liam Cohen and I watched Baker Mayfield have 41 touchdowns, I'm probably not trying to change too much. Just like Kevin Patullo with the Eagles, you're trying to add what you think you do well and what you think your personnel will do well for what you do, but you are not trying to break what isn't fixed, or fix. I'm sorry, you're not trying to fix what isn't broken. And clearly, I thought Baker Mayfield came into his own last year, and Josh Grizzard's job is just to keep building on that and not try to do anything too tricky to make him take a step back. Now, the Bucks are fighting the fact that they don't have Chris Godwin yet, and they don't have Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle. That will hurt them ordinarily. And until Wirfs comes back, we'll see how they're able to function offensively. But this is where I talk about the rookies. There are a lot of expectations for first-round pick Emeka Egbuka for the Bucks. He's going to start. He's going to start opposite Mike Evans. They're also down Jalen McMillan, as far as wide receiver. So their depth will be tested here. The Bucks at wide receiver. It's to me, it just means that there's going to be a crap load of targets for Mike Evans and for this rookie Ekbuka out of Ohio State, who they absolutely love. And it wouldn't surprise me even if when Godwin came back, if Godwin goes back to the slot, Ekbuka stays as either an outside or an inside receiver. I mean, it's scary to think that this team is one injury away from Sterling Shepard having to play a lot, or the rookie Tez Johnson. But Evans is one of the best that there is, and there are big expectations for Egbuka. Meanwhile, the Falcons are almost the same team every year. It's like they have, to me, very few really elite blue chip players, but they also have a lot of pretty good to decent players. So they're not a terrible team. They're a team that you think should compete for the postseason. Somehow, though, last year they beat the Bucks twice. So they owned a 2-game division lead in the NFC South and still lost the division to the Bucks by 2 games. So that's a 4-game swing that they somehow blew by having that 2-game lead over the Bucks, and that just shows you how up and down they are. I liked what I saw from Michael Penix when he took over for Cousins. He's going to get the chance to lead this team, to be the quarterback that he needs. Does he have a ton of playmakers? No, but he does have one of the league's best players in Bijan Robinson. So that's one of those few blue chip players that I'm talking about. The offensive line's good. They lost their center. Center went and signed with the Bears, Dahlman. So we'll see what kind of impact that has. It's a good offensive line. I don't call it a great offensive line, though. So I'm concerned about it. As far as weaponry, Drake London is an example of what I'm talking about. A guy who's a good player. He's a winning player, not top 5 wide receiver, top 10 probably. But that's what this team is filled with. Guys who are not top 5 kind of guys. You go through the Eagles roster and you say, hey, they got the best right tackle in the league, top 5 left tackle, top 5 wide receiver, top 5 tight end. You go through the Falcons roster and you say, all right, they got Bijan Robinson. On defense, they have some pretty good players. Jesse Bates is a good safety, but you just don't find yourself talking about most of our other players as top 5, but you also don't think that they're terrible. David Onyemata, good defensive tackle. Caden Ellis, good linebacker. Again, Jesse Bates, good safety. AJ Terrell, good cornerback. All right, we'll see how some of their rookies perform. This is why the Falcons, who year after year fall short in pass rush, use 2 high picks. They used the first-round pick on the kid from Georgia, Jalen Walker, and they traded back, I believe, into the first round to get James Pierce, the pass rusher out of Tennessee. If Walker and Pierce are really good pass rushers year one, then I think the Falcons could be more competitive against this Buccaneers team, especially while the Bucs are shorthanded early on. But that's a lot to ask for 2 pass rushers to sort of carry a defense. And it's a lot to ask for Michael Penix in his first year as a starter to consistently outscore teams, put 28 on the board when after Bijan Robinson and after Drake London, you don't have a ton in the playmaker tank. Darnell Mooney's a nice number 2 receiver. I know he's been battling some injuries. We'll see if he plays. Again, they can play, they can move the ball, they become competitive, but do they have enough horses to win games is my question about the Falcons. Bengals 5.5-point favorites at the Browns. I liked what I saw from Zach Taylor, their coach, in the preseason. He said, we're going to play starters. We want to get off to a hot start. We know that the Bengals are really struggling defensively from a personnel standpoint. They have a new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, comes over from Notre Dame, did a great job at Notre Dame, got into the championship game. Now he's got to take on a defense that has not a lot of talent. Now they worked it out with Trey Hendrickson. They drafted Shamar Stewart, and after some drama with his contract, he's on the team, and he's a guy who has to be coached up. So they have a decent pass rusher there, and we'll see. And Joseph Asai is okay, but they're just not – they have not been a very good team for a couple of years now on the back end. Fortunately for them, they're playing the Browns. The Browns have got Joe Flacco, a quarterback. They don't have a whole lot of weaponry on the offensive line. They've got a couple of decent receivers. I guess Tillman, Jerry Judy. We'll see how that manifests. But I think if the Bengals get off to a fast start and if they can just generate a few defensive stops against the Browns, which they should be able to do, they should be able to win the game pretty handily. Dolphins at Colts. This one's interesting to me. The Colts are 1.5-point favorites, and I can't figure out why. I guess because they're home. I don't know if Daniel Jones, who's going to be their starter, deserves that kind of benefit of the doubt. But they are one. And I get the Dolphins are not a juggernaut either. They've got some real question marks on their O-line, defensively with Tyreek Hill. But I don't know what the Colts have done other than this. I will say this. The Colts have assembled a good roster. They have a good 53-man roster, but they have a gigantic question mark at the biggest spot in the game. And I just don't know that Daniel Jones is going to be the guy. I think he's going to have some moments, and those moments are going to be good because, again, they've got players like Jonathan Taylor, great running back, Quentin Nelson, great left guard. They have a pretty good offensive line. Their kid left tackle, Ryman, has come along. Decent receivers in Pittman and Downs and Alec Pierce. All right. And I am very excited. I know you guys are all going to call it the Homer bias, but I do believe that Tyler Warren, I told you, I think that rookies are really going to have an impact on some of these teams. I think Tyler Warren will have a chance to be offensive rookie of the year. Just to me, it depends on how Travis Hunter is going to get used in Jacksonville and can he stay healthy and handle the workload. But Tyler Warren will absolutely have a chance because I think he's going to touch the ball 8 to 10 times a game at least. I think they are going to force feed him the football to bring a little toughness to that offense and to make sure Daniel Jones has a very quick outlet to get the ball to. But this is a team that if it had a quarterback who I considered a top 12 quarterback, if you put like, I don't know, Kyler Murray on this team, I would say, man, I think this team can win some games. They've got some players. I love some of their defensive players. Latu is a good pass rusher. You know, they've got some good guys up front. DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye. So they can play some defense. They drafted JT Tuimoloau in the second round. They've always been able to play some pretty good defense. Zaire Franklin's a good linebacker. It's not a great defense, but they've got a good enough defense, and their overall roster is good enough to win some games. But to me, Jones is a huge, huge question mark. And I just don't know how long that's going to last, if Anthony Richardson is going to get back in there at some point. I really don't understand the plan that they've got at quarterback, but we'll see. They're going to play a Dolphins team that has a lot of question marks. I mentioned the Tyreek Hill down year. He's looking for a bounce back. They deal with injuries all the time, but they're more talented. I do think that they have more pass rushers and more prolific playmakers than the Colts do. The question is, can they put it all together? Can it matter when they need it to matter? Are they able to kind of function offensively and defensively, despite the fact that their offensive line, in particular, isn't very impressive? But it would not shock me if the Dolphins won that game. I think they are the better overall team because of the better overall team because their quarterback knows what he's doing, and when he's healthy, Tua Tagovailoa, they have an offense that can be hard to defend. They throw the ball horizontally more than they throw the ball vertically. But with Devon A-Chain, with Tyreek Hill, assuming he's still at least a decent receiver, and getting Jalen Waddle back into the action, which I think the Dolphins really missed last year. They just threw the ball to the Jonnu Smith, the tight end, too much, and threw the ball to A-Chan too much because of their offensive line and because they had a backup quarterback for a long stretch while Tua was out. But when Tua's in, they're way more functional. The ball goes where it's supposed to be, and they become tougher to defend. So I'm going to go. I'll give you my picks later, but I'm a little surprised by the Colts being 1.5-point favorites there. If anything, I think that would be a pick 'em. Raiders Patriots is a game that I'm really excited about. I'm excited to see what the Raiders have now that they've got Pete Carroll as their head coach, a proven winner, a ground and pound philosophy. Geno Smith, new quarterback, played his best ball under Pete Carroll, loves to work off play action, a very accurate quarterback when working off play action. Ashton Genty, they drafted him. You know they're going to give him the ball 20 to 30 times. That's what Pete Carroll does. He's running game, play defense, work off play action, make things efficient, make things simple, try to play defense. The Raiders do not have very good horses on defense, so that's going to be their issue on the onset. But this Patriots team that they're going to play, they made a ton of changes, and they look on paper better because of who they brought in. We all know they signed Milton Williams. We all know that they have Mike Vrabel as their head coach now, who they're expecting to bring a little bit more, I guess, polish and season. They drafted Will Campbell to help the offensive line. They brought in who's the corner they brought in to in free Carlton Davis in free agency. They've got Christian Gonzalez, who I do think is quietly one of the best corners in the league. Christian Barmore is a really nice defensive tackle who missed last year. That I believe was the blood clot issue, so he didn't play a whole lot. So you look up and down the roster, you say, man, they brought in, players. Their center, Garrett Bradbury from the Vikings. But we know this more than anyone. If you watch football, all right, Stephon Diggs, I forgot to mention him. You watch football, you know that the teams that win the offseason don't typically win the regular season. The teams that make the most free agent moves and the biggest splashes and dole out all the money, it doesn't always manifest in wins or even, functionability. I do think the Patriots will be better off. I think Drake May showed you something last year. He can play, and it was smart of New England to go spend some money and to bring in a guy like Diggs, assuming he's got something left, and to help out the offensive line, and then help out the defense. And on top of that, you draft well on the offensive line. I think that everything the Patriots are doing, it's not wild, wacky, and unwise, but it is a whole lot of moving parts and a whole lot of newness. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders could come over to New England. Last year the Raiders in week 2 went over to Baltimore, pulled out a surprise win. Traveling east is not as difficult anymore for these West Coast teams in 1 o'clock games. I've been through that. I went through that a lot last year where it used to be a slam dunk. The West Coast team traveling to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock game was going to lose that game, no matter how good they were. The percentages were something like over 70%. It's changed. Travel has changed. Sports science has changed. Conditioning has changed. You see West Coast teams come to the East Coast for 1 o'clock games and win all the time. And last year, the Raiders came down from 10 points behind in the fourth quarter to beat the Ravens of all teams in Baltimore in a week 2 game. I think it was week 2 where they had to do that travel. So I'm not afraid of the travel for the Raiders. I think this will be a really fun game to watch. It'll be a close game. There'll probably be some ugly moments. You're going to get that. These teams are not very talented from top to bottom compared to some of the best in the league, but I like the direction that both teams are trying to head in, and I think this game will actually be fairly exciting to watch. If anything, just to see the rookie Ashton Genty for the Raiders and then Drake May in year 2 should be fun. Good game. Again, Patriots 2.5-point favorites. Cardinals. Cardinals are going to the Saints. They are 6.5-point favorites at the Superdome, and they probably should be. The Saints, I feel bad for Kellen Moore. He's in a really tough situation. They need to lose games to be able to put themselves in position to get a quarterback. They're going with Spencer Rattler. We'll see how long that lasts. They obviously didn't see enough from Tyler Schuff in the preseason camp. He was their second round pick out of Louisville. Obviously didn't see enough to name him their starter, so they're going with Spencer Rattler. They got some injuries already that they're dealing with. Olave is a really talented player. Rashid Shaheed's a talented player. So they've got some weapons, but I don't know that Kellen Moore can come in with that quarterback and limited. They have some decent offensive linemen, but they're not great. I just don't see this team being very good. And the Cardinals are a team in that NFC West that made a lot of improvements they were there. That whole NFC West last year was a slugfest until the Rams pulled it out over the last few weeks. The Cardinals think that they're an improved team. I don't think that they're a team loaded with playmakers either, outside of Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., but they have built up the offense. Connor can still grind away, and their defenses are merging. So I think the Cardinals can come in here. It's always dangerous to take a road team with a 6.5-point line, but if there's a team that can do it, I think the Cardinals can do it. The Saints are just a long way away in my mind from being a good team. But remember, week 1's a con job. So if the Saints win, don't get fooled into thinking like Kellen Moore is going to, perform miracles out there in New Orleans. Week 1 can be a con job, but I would be surprised if the Cardinals didn't win that game. That was a good, popular survivor pool choice. The Cardinals beating the Saints. Steelers 2.5-point favorites at the Jets. This is like two teams that, first of all, it's well done by the schedule makers to have Aaron Rodgers' new team against Aaron Rodgers' last team. But this team, if you're of the older generation and you really love defense and running game, you don't want to see a quarterback throw the ball 40 times a game. You don't want to see this thing being 34, 31, 38, 34. If you want this old school 80s, 90s style football, this game is right up your alley. I mean, this is the game for that era. Okay, the Steelers, they have, outside of DK Metcalf, I don't know who Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball to. Freiermuth's a good tight end. Roman Wilson, year two, I mean, he got lost in having an injury last year, and he was just not a part of the offense. But I like that kid coming out of Michigan. He can be a pretty decent slot receiver. But the Steelers are going to run the ball with three different guys. I don't think Caleb Johnson, their rookie, who will probably be by the end of the year their main ball carrier. Not ready yet. Caleb Johnson, the kid from Iowa, who is a perfect zone runner and a great match for Arthur Smith's zone rushing offense. It's going to work. It's going to be good. But for now, look for Jalen Warren to get some carries. Look for Kenneth Gainwell to get some carries. Look for Caleb Johnson. They're going to go RBBC for the start of the season unless somebody emerges. They're going to go play a Jets team that I like the hire. I think Aaron Glenn, who played for the Jets, who was a Pro Bowl cornerback for the Jets, who just comes over from Detroit and watched how he and Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, how as a coaching staff, they changed the culture. They brought in the right players in Detroit, and they took a franchise that had been down for decades, a franchise known for just making the wrong decision every time, and they lifted it up. And unfortunately for the Lions, they had all those injuries, and we really never got to see their true potential. They're still a very good team. We'll talk about in a minute, but I like that the Jets take one of their own, and Aaron Glenn, who just was part of a coaching staff and a franchise that figured out how to get out of its own way and build up. And that is exactly what the Jets need, because the Jets never, because of their owner, never figure out how to get out of their own way. So if Aaron Glenn can do anything, it's take what he saw, learned, and helped do in Detroit and bring that to the Jets. They are going to run the ball. They're going to put, like most teams that have a defensive head coach and not a great quarterback, they're going to try to run the ball as much as possible. Breece Hall is a name that has been on everybody's radar over the last 2 or 3 years. He hasn't really emerged into what people thought he would be. And I think he'll be a big part of the offense because it will be a ground and pound offense. But do not forget this name, Braylon Allen, the second-year running back out of Wisconsin. He is a really, really good ball carrier. Had a nice rookie year last year. It sounds like they're going to be sort of 50-50 splitting carries. We'll see between Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, but they're going to run a lot. So both of these guys are going to get plenty of work. They might even get Isaiah Davis in there as a third stringer. They're going to run with those three guys. They're going to run the ball when they can with Justin Fields. And, when they get into those third and long situations, they're going to try to pop the ball to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a really, really talented wide receiver on a team that has absolutely nothing else at wide receiver to be excited about. And that's why I mentioned, again, rookies. Armand Membu, their right tackle, first-round pick. They now have 2 first-round picks at left tackle and right tackle. Pretty good interior with Joe Tippmann. Now, I think he's going to have to move from center to guard because they lost, unfortunately, Elijah Vera Tucker. But their offensive line is coming along. They will run the ball. Can Justin Fields make enough plays on third down, either using his legs or getting the ball to Garrett Wilson or getting the ball, throwing it to a running back, or Mason Taylor, a rookie tight end at LSU, who I really liked coming out of the draft, sort of thought he might be a good fit for the Eagles. Can that be enough to just average? Can they get to 21 to 24 points a game? That's not a lot. That's not going to win you a bunch of games, but the Jets have very good defense. Pass rushers everywhere. Jermaine Johnson returns from his ACL. Will McDonald stepped up last year. Quinnen Williams in the middle. Sauce Gardner, one of the best corners in the league. Andre Sisco is a good safety. Brandon Stevens. They have players up and down the roster on defense, so they can perform if their offense allows them to be. If the offense can be functional, if they can move the chains, if the defense doesn't have to be on the field for 3 hours every Sunday or every time they play. That's the question facing the Jets, and I'll be interested to see as the year goes on how Aaron Glenn coaches and what they can do offensively to try to maximize the very little offensive weaponry that they have because the defense is there. And that's what's going to make Steelers Jets a really good. It's going to be an ugly run the ball, run the ball, play defense, kick field goals kind of game, which is pretty apropos for Steelers Jets. Giants at Commanders. Now, the Commanders are going to be a really fascinating team to watch this year. They're 6.5-point favorites because they're coming off a 12-win season, going to the NFC Championship game, and all the offseason additions that they made. But let's remember this about the Commanders. And I'm high on them. I like the Commanders a lot. I think they made good moves. But they won a ridiculous number of close games last year. They won a game against the Giants. I think it was the first game between them somewhere week 3, week 4, maybe even week 2, where they kicked nothing but field goals. I think they won 21 to like 20 or something, or 21-17, and they got 7 field goals. All right. We all know about the Hail Mary game. We all know about their win over the Eagles. Jalen Hurts wound up getting hurt in that game. They won a ridiculous number of games that either team could have won at the end, and they did that because their quarterback played otherworldly. They put a lot on his shoulders. He handled it. I think the sky is the limit for Jaden Daniels. I think it was smart that they got him Deebo Samuel. I think it was smart that they traded for Tunsil. I think it was smart that they drafted him a right tackle. They are building the right way, but they are very old. My colleague at Jimmy Kempski at Philly Voice every year after after training camp, when the 53-man rosters are announced, does an average age story and he calculates the average age of every 53-man roster. And the Commanders are number 1, and it's not even close. And even if you took away some of those, like maybe they have a 30-something-year-old long snapper or a punter or something. If you took away 3 or 4 of their over 30s, they're still one of the oldest teams in football. Bobby Wagner has been around the block for quite a while. But what they have is a unbelievably talented quarterback, and they've given him more, and they've got some pieces on defense that I like as well. I thought Sanderstill, the cornerback, played well. Lattimore is always an injury threat, so I can't even take him seriously until I see him play 4 or 5 games in a row. But they drafted a kid that I really liked at cornerback out of Mississippi, Ole Miss, that I think is going to be a pretty decent player when he does get on the field. They've got Quan Martin, got Sanders still. Trey Amos is the guy that I was talking about that they drafted. I like him. Luvu's always a spark plug as a linebacker who can rush from the edges. They've got some good defensive linemen. Listen, I'm not down on the Commanders, but what I'm telling you is the ball bounced their way quite a bit last year. Now, good for them for not resting on laurels and still going out in the offseason and making some changes and trying to improve the roster. But it would not surprise me if they don't reach 12 wins again. I'm not saying if they did, fine. Maybe if they have a breakout year, even more. If they win 13, 14, maybe they're that good. I don't know. We'll see. I'm a little skeptical of it. They're certainly in the conversation to rub elbows with the Eagles, but I don't want to rubber stamp this team as a top 2 or 3 seed or the biggest threat to the Eagles in the NFC yet. Let's see how they do against the Giants team this week at home. They'll be at home against a Giants team that I have no issue saying could produce the best 4-man rush in football. And that is a very, very significant step. Now, obviously, that means that Abdul Carter, the number 2 overall pick, has to be 3 overall pick, has to be as good of an edge rusher as he looked in camp, as he should be, being that high of a pick. But you put Abdul Carter on the field with Dexter Lawrence and with Brian Burns and with Kayvon Thibodeau, and you get them stunting and twisting and overloading, and you do things like that, you will probably have a chance to hit the quarterback and cause a lot of pressure. And the Giants are pretty good at linebacker and secondary as well. They're not great. They had Javon Holland, the safety from Miami. They draft at that position. Newbin, the safety, they have good expectations for. I thought he was good as a rookie. I mean, they've got some pretty good players on defense. They just need the offense to be functional, and I'm just not sure it will be. They're still waiting for Andrew Thomas to get healthy and come back. He's not going to play, so they'll be without him. And obviously, Russell Wilson's going to try in his shot. I have not liked how Russell Wilson has played quarterback in about 4 or 5 years, and I don't think he's a great fit for this team. He loves to throw the moon ball. Yeah, you got Malik Neighbors. Will probably get the ball to Neighbors 9, 10, 11 times on third down. What about first down and second down? Is he going to be able to make the throws that he needs to make? Are they going to just try to run the ball until they get to third down? That's what the Broncos tried with Wilson a couple of years ago. It didn't work out very well. So I don't know. The Giants have a lot of questions until Jackson Dart takes over a quarterback. And then when he does, they'll still have questions. Sure, he looked good in the preseason, but, we all know the preseason and the regular season are different. But he does appear to be their guy of the future. He probably will get a chance sooner than later. Right now, it's Russell Wilson. And it's really Russell Wilson, Malik Neighbors, try to get the ball to Tyrone Tracy, their running back, who was pretty good last year. But the offensive line is still a problem. It's better, but it's still a problem, and it's still going to come back to hurt them. And I just see, how Russell is. He likes to run around and hold on to the ball and try to avoid the pass rush. And then he winds up taking a sack or throwing the ball away or trying to throw a ball into coverage after he ran around for 3 seconds. I don't think it's going to be very pretty offensively. And I think that's going to hurt the fact that the Giants have good defense because the defense is going to be on the field for quite a bit. I mentioned Paulson Adebo, another player that they got in free agency. The defense is good. Defense has a chance to be very, very good if the offense can be functional. But I think that's the big question. Can the offense be functional? Next game, Panthers or Jaguars. Jaguars 3.5-point favorites. Another game that, you look at and you say, oh, God, blech, right? AFC South, NFC South, not good teams. I'm kind of really fascinated to see what Liam Cohen does with this Jaguars offense. He's got Brian Thomas Jr., emerged last year as a rookie, really good wide receiver. They draft Travis Hunter. They got a young tight end from Penn State, Bretton Strange. They want to get involved. They have this kid they drafted running back in the 6th round, Bashul Tutin, that is one of those sort of training camp darlings, and we'll see if he actually emerges as their top ball carrier, because there's big question marks right now whether they really like Travis Etienne as their running back or if Bigsby is good enough to be their guy. It sounds like by the end of the year, maybe this Tutin kid will be their guy. But listen, to me, it's about the passing offense. And to me, it's about, can Liam Cohen do for Trevor Lawrence what he did for Baker Mayfield? With the route concepts, this is a McVay style of offense because Liam Cohen used to work under Sean McVay. I believe he was either his pass game coordinator or offensive coordinator at one point. But those are the concepts that he helped bring to Tampa. And can he do that here in Jacksonville? Can he get the ball to Travis Hunter? Can he get the ball to Brian Thomas? Can he make things easier for Trevor Lawrence with layup routes? Can they target Bretton Strange, the tight end, a little bit more? The offensive line is a big issue. It's a question mark. There's no doubt about it. Defense is okay. Hasn't lived up to its potential. They've got some pass rushers with Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. This is a team to me that if the Liam Cohen impact is real, that I think can be surprisingly competitive in the AFC South. That we're going to play a Panthers team that they should beat. I like what the Panthers are doing too. Obviously, we saw last year, Bryce Young can play a little bit when he came back in, got the ball. They get him a receiver like Ted McMillan, who, again, as we're talking about rookies, I think Ted McMillan, if healthy, has the ability to go and be, for them, what Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors were for the Giants last year. High volume, high target receivers, highly productive receivers on teams that just don't have a whole lot of weaponry around them. Maybe Xavier Legette takes a big jump in year 2. Chuba Hubbard's a very nice running back. I think the Panthers are okay offensively, not great. I think that there are question marks defensively about them, and they're going to struggle this year. But the big thing is, can they start to build offensively? Can they believe in the long term in Bryce Young here third year. Now that he's got Tet McMillan, now that he's got year two of Xavier Leggett, now that they can run the ball a little bit, their offensive line on the interior is actually pretty good. So can they run the ball a little bit there with Chuba Hubbard and keep games honest? But their defense, they've got to be able to build that up. But I'm excited about this game. A lot of young talent between Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Tet McMillan, Xavier Leggett, and the two quarterbacks, Lawrence and Bryce Young. I think there's just enough worth watching to make this one interesting. All right, I'm going to get to the 4 o'clock games in a second. I want to remind you, I've been talking about this guy. You know that one guy in the group chat who hits a 5-leg parlay week one and then doesn't shut up about it for the rest of the season? Well, hey, we may not love that guy because he's a bragger, but we all want to be that guy. I mean, that guy could be you. That person could be you. Could be a guy, could be a girl, anybody. Could be you. And my bookie makes it stupid easy to get in on the action. College ball, NFL, super contests, survivor pools. They got all the spreads, the player props, and the in-game lines that you could want under one roof. That is the beauty of my bookie. If you're new to my bookie, just use our promo code THEBIRDS, one word, THEBIRDS. Use that promo code, and any bet you choose up to $500 is fully covered. So make your play, and if it doesn't hit, you get it right back when you use the bet bonus token. So there's no better time to jump in and no better place to play. Football is back. Let's make some money with my bookie. All right, the 4 o'clock games. Listen, the Broncos 8.5-point favorites over the Titans. That's a deserved line. The Broncos were a much improved team. Expectations are high. Year two of Bo Nix and Sean Payton. They have a great defense. Not a good defense. They have a great selection of pass rushers, and that's gonna make life difficult for the Tennessee Titans. But the Titans are going to be buoyed by having the number one overall pick. They are going to be more functional this year offensively than they were with Will Levis, who just did not play good football. He played terrible football last year. Cam Ward will give them something. Tony Pollard is going to be their main running back now because Spears is hurt. They've got, I think the Ward Calvin Ridley connection is going to be something worthwhile. To me, that has a chance to be this year's version of last year's Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin connection, which kind of came out of nowhere. Not that McLaurin hadn't been a 1,000-yard receiver many years before, every year before that, but it really picked up when they got Jaden Daniels there. And I think Calvin Ridley's career and the kind of year and playmaking ability he has will be accentuated by having a guy like Cam Ward as his quarterback. They've got some. They have some offensive line issues, but they signed Dan Moore to play left tackle from the Steelers. He's not a bad left tackle, not an elite one, but not bad. You know, that helps them put J.C. Latham at right tackle. Latham was a right tackle in college at Alabama, not a left tackle. He struggled there. So you got Peter Skoronski, another first-round pick at guard. Cushenberry is the center. They signed Kevin Zeitler. So they did what they're supposed to do. They made their offensive line better for a rookie quarterback, and they're going to give this kid Ward a chance. They're going to run the ball out with Pollard, right? They're going to get the ball to Ridley. They're going to try to get the ball to the tight end, Chigo Okonkwo, who didn't really have a good year last year, but from what I understand, had a really nice camp. They got Gunnar Helm, who they picked out of Texas in the 4th round. They've got some guys they can move the ball with. And listen to this rookie name, too. He was a 4th-round pick. It's Elik Ayomanor. He's out of Stanford. Elik Ayomanor, maybe it's Elik, I don't know. Stanford wide receiver. Greg Cosell really liked him. I think he's going to wind up starting, and he's going to complement Ridley and a veteran like Tyler Lockett. So they have the ability to move the ball and do some things on offense. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that against a Broncos defense that is loaded up front and in the back. I mean, Patrick Surtain's great too. They draft Jahdae Barron. I mean, this Broncos team is pretty legit. I have some questions about how good the Broncos will be offensively, just because it's year two of Bo Nix, and Bo Nix ran around. He's athletic. He's got some weapons with Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. I don't see this team as a juggernaut offensively yet. I think that remains to be seen if Sean Payton can really help take this Broncos offense to a second level. But the Titans defense has some question marks. So I do think I understand the 8.5 line. It wouldn't shock me if the Titans cover, because I think they're going to be a little more functionally offensively than people think. But the Broncos are the Broncos are going to be a pretty good team, and their defense is going to win them a lot of games alone as their offense continues to grow and emerge. 49ers at Seahawks. I'm in the camp. Some people are absolutely confused why the 49ers are actually the betting favorites to win the NFC West. Some people, like myself, think, well, it's because they actually, despite all their question marks, have a lot of really good players. And that division itself doesn't have a true juggernaut. I mean, the Rams, I like the Rams. I'm high on the Rams. Stafford's got a back problem that could be problematic. But if you go up and down each team's 53-man roster and you look at the 49ers and take health into consideration, that right now, if healthy, it sounds like McCaffrey's going to be okay. There was a little calf scare, but they've got McCaffrey, got Trent Williams. Brock Purdy has been a very good quarterback for their system. They will get Brandon Ayuk back at some point, but even while he's not there, there are high expectations for a first-round pick in Ricky Pearsall. On defense, they don't have as much talent, but they've always kind of been that team that has put up so many points offensively, which I think that they're going to be able to do again, that but I forgot to mention George Kittle, didn't I? Yeah, George Kittle. They've always had a defense that sort of benefited from their offense's ability to control possession and move the ball. And the defense isn't terrible. You know, Bryce Hall will go back to being in a wide nine there. Sorry, Bryce Huff will go back to playing in the wide nine. That's where he belongs. That's where he flourished with the Jets. That's why he didn't fit with the Eagles. They drafted Michael Williams out of Georgia, a really good defensive lineman, a good pass rusher. He'll play right away. Nick Bosa, we know, is one of the very best. So yeah, they're not amazing up front, but those three guys alone should give them a legitimate pass rush. Fred Warner's a good linebacker, and their secondary is always guys who they make it work with. You know, Jair Brown, Ronaldo Green's a corner they drafted in the second round a couple of years ago. Lenore. Looks like they'll have a new nickel corner. They're not going to be a great defense, but if they can get back to scoring at the clip that they typically score at, then that will help their defense. And I, think having Robert Saleh back as the coordinator is going to be very beneficial for them. They're 1.5-point favorites in Seattle. And again, I think that there's enough talent on the 49er roster that they remind me of how people felt about the Rams the year after the Rams won the Super Bowl. I think Matthew Stafford got hurt. They got a little old. They wound up not having a great year the next year. And then everybody was down on him. Stafford was no longer considered a top 5 quarterback, and the Rams stink. And then lo and behold, the next year and two, they're fighting to the point where they're back in the playoffs and giving the Eagles a really tough game in the divisional round. And now there are a lot of people's picks to win the NFC West, and they've got Devontae Adams and all that. But my point is, don't make that same mistake with the 49ers. They have a lot of talent. They can really score when things are going well. And right now they're healthy. So as we sit here today, I think the 49ers, with that weak schedule that they're going to wind up playing because of their bad finish last year, are a legit threat to make the postseason. But of course, health will be their biggest obstacle. Can they stay healthy? Can they keep everybody on the field? And when Brandon Ayuk comes back, will he be the player that he was before he got hurt? Seahawks have Sam Darnold. They have Clint Kubiak now as their offensive coordinator. You might remember Clint Kubiak from the first 2 weeks of last year as the Saints offensive coordinator, when the Saints averaged, I think the Saints scored 44 points in the opener and 40 in week 2 before, it all came crashing down against the Eagles. And then a bunch of injuries set in, and then Olave got hurt. But yeah, Clint Kubiak, who is, of course, from the Kubiak / Shanahan, McVay, whatever you want to call it, that tree is going to come to the Seattle team. He's going to work a lot of running with both Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. He's going to play a lot of that wide zone that is difficult to defend. The Seahawks seem to be a little higher on their offensive line than maybe I am or the rest of the league. But again, these coordinators compensate for their offensive line deficiencies. When I say these coordinators, I'm talking about guys from the Shanahan and McVay tree. They compensate by running a lot of wide zone, getting the ball outside the tackles with their running backs, which is, they've got good ones. They've got Kenneth Walker. They have Zach Charbonnet, and then working play action and finding really good layup routes for guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a breakout year last year. So I'll say this: there's some intrigue to me about this Seattle offense. I don't think it's really fearsome. I don't think it's blessed with a whole lot of guys that scare you outside of, I mean, Kenneth Walker never stays healthy himself. I think Charbonnet is a really good number two option, though. Smith and Jigba is a good wide receiver. I don't know how much left Cooper Kupp has. He was playing in this style of offense when he was with the Rams, and he just did not look like the same guy. So I'm not sure that they have anybody outside of Smith and Jigba that you can really count on to move the ball in the passing game. I know they're very encouraged by this fifth-round pick, Torrey Horton. He's probably going to wind up playing quite a bit, if not starting. I know they added Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State to their offensive line, so that should help. That's probably why they're a little more bullish on their line than I am looking at it. But the coordinator will help them out. But I don't know if this team can – I don't know if there's enough weaponry for them to beat a team like the 49ers when the 49ers are healthy. I don't know that they are yet where they want to be defensively under Mike McDonald, who I thought did a nice job last year, and I think is a very good defensive mind in this league. And even though he doesn't have a ton of blue chippers, he's got play like veterans like DeMarcus Lawrence and Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams. They do have a blue chipper in Devin Witherspoon. They're a corner who can play outside and nickel. They drafted Amin Wari, the safety out of Clemson, who is just totally twitched up and will probably make a big difference right off the start. But again, I just don't love their defense overall. It's going to have to be highly schemed for them to win, and they're going up against a very highly schemed offense of the 49ers already. So it's an NFC West battle. Anybody can win it because of that, but I do like the 49ers to get off to a pretty good start. That brings us to the big game, Lions at Packers. If you love football, you're going to love this game. The Packers were my team that I thought could be a serious threat to the Eagles even before the Parsons trade. The Parsons trade just makes it better. I was just looking for Jordan Love to play 15 to 20% better and for the defense to be a little bit more vicious in the pass rush. Well, they took care of that with Micah Parsons, and they gave Love a chance to be better with the drafting of Matthew Golden, adding that element to their receiving core. They're going to ride Josh Jacobs. They're going to throw the ball to Dubs. Now, the only problem is it sounds like Jaden Reed is dealing, who I really like as a move Z receiver, who can do a lot of things, had a big game against the Eagles in the opener last year. He's dealing with a foot injury that is going to be a season-long problem. So it's a good thing they drafted Golden. I don't know how a wide receiver who has a foot injury that's as bad as it sounds, I guess he has to deal with the pain, is going to be able to make it through 17 games. And losing him is tough. They do still have Romeo Doubs. I think they're still waiting for Dontavian Wicks to be more consistent. But I mentioned again at the top of the show, rookies are going to play a role for teams this year in a really big way. It's going to be make or break. And if Matthew Golden can get off to a good start and give Love that downfield presence that he wants. I mean, Jordan Love's maybe his flaw is that he just wants to take too many big shots down the field. But if you got a guy like Golden who can get a step on the coverage, well, then maybe that's the perfect complement for Jordan Love. And if that is, then watch out, because the Packers are an excellently coached team. And I think they will be a very tough out this year. And they'll get a test right off the bat as they are home at Lambeau against the Lions, who lost both of their coordinators. We talked about it. No Ben Johnson, no Aaron Glenn, but Dan Campbell is still there. Ton of talent. Do not just dismiss the Lions because they lost their coordinators. Could it impact them? For sure. Do they have a ton of talent? Yes. They have two really good running backs, an elite running back in Gibbs. Montgomery is back. He's good. It's a nice thunder and lightning combo. Jared Goff has played really well within this scheme, which you imagine is going to stay pretty similar. Wide receivers, obviously Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Sam Laporta at tight end, Jamison Williams, if he plays a full season. I mean, this is a team that's got loaded with firepower. And then they draft a kid, Isaac Tesla, in the third round, and the guy rips it up all preseason. We'll see. He's kind of got this, I don't know, he's being compared a little bit to Nakua in his ability to just go get the football. And if that's the case, if he winds up being that good, this is just the rich getting richer. Now, defense is going to be a little bit of an issue. Health is an issue. It was obviously a real problem for them last year. We'll see. And again, new defensive coordinator. We'll see what they can do. Aiden Hutch, they just don't have enough pass rushers. Aiden Hutchinson is a good pass rusher. He's coming back from the knee injury. He's good, very good. Marcus Davenport is not that guy to be your number two pass rusher. So they're either going to have to manufacture it or figure out a way to cause havoc for quarterbacks with line games. They're going to have to do something because outside of Hutchinson, maybe make a trade. Outside of Hutchinson, they're really missing in the pass rush. They have a very good secondary. Love, obviously, Curvy Joseph had a big year last year. Brian Branch, very, very good safety, sort of hybrid nickel player. Brian, they found something in Amik Robinson last year. Came over and played really good football for them. Terry and Arnold year two. Their linebackers are solid. This is a really good team. This is a team. You heard me talk about the Falcons, right? And comparing them to the Eagles, where the Falcons just don't have a whole lot of players where you put the red circle around and say that's a blue chip player. Well, the Lions have plenty of them, and they will be there at the end. I absolutely guarantee you that when you're talking about the top four teams in the NFC and you got the Eagles and the Packers, the Lions are in that conversation, and they are going to be so motivated to show everybody that last year, if they didn't have all those injuries, that they would have been the team in the Super Bowl. That's how they believe. That's how they feel. And honestly, they were headed that way until all those injuries set in. I do feel a little robbed that we did not get an Eagles-Lions NFC Championship game. I would have loved to see how that went. Those were two teams with the two best 53-man rosters. So the Lions will be motivated. It wouldn't shock me if they beat the Packers in week one because they're still they probably have a better 53. I just think the Packers at home with the roster that they have, the coaching that they have makes them tough. I think 5 of their 6 losses last year were by 6 points or fewer. So this will be a clash of titans when the Lions and the Packers play. You got Texans at Rams. Rams are 3.5-point favorites. The Texans are a bounce back team for me. I know that. Let me just say this. I think CJ Stroud is a bounce back player for me. I think the Texans defense is very, very good. I don't know if the Texans offensive line is going to be that much better than last year. Last year it was terrible. They moved on from Tunsil. They drafted Ursary out of Minnesota. Looks like he's going to start left tackle. They've made some changes. They drafted some receivers, got rid of Diggs. Stroud to Nico Collins is as good of a quarterback wide receiver connection as there is in football, as much as it is with Stafford and Puka Nacua. I think that the Texans, if their offensive line is functional, if it's better, if it's 10% better than it was last year, and CJ Stroud is 10% better than last year, remember, they made the playoffs. They won the division, made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They beat the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken, and they gave the Chiefs a pretty good game. So despite all their flaws, they were not a bad team, and they have a very good, an elite defense, I'll even go as far as say. So if they're better offensively, and CJ Stroud is 10 to 20% better than he was last year, then I think this Texans team has a real shot to be a very good AFC contender. And it'll be on display early here, week one against the Rams, a Rams team that when Matthew Stafford is healthy, they're good. They're going to get the ball to Devontae Adams. They're going to get the ball to Puka. You know what the Rams are going to do. There's no intrigue with them. They're going to run the ball with Kyron Williams. They're going to throw the ball into tight windows to Nacua and Devontae Adams. They're not going to rip up the scoreboard week in, week out, but they have the potential to be explosive at times. But they're mostly methodically going to move the ball with their run game and their intermediate pass game, and maybe every once in a while they'll hit one deep to Tutu Atwell, but they'll be able to score. And I love their young defense. Jared Verse, Britton Fisk. I mean, they showed you last year. Those guys can rush the passer. They can do things. This is a very similar matchup between an NFC contender and an AFC contender who are strong in the same ways and who go about playing the same way. And that's why I really like this game. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites. Anybody can win this game. Honestly, I think it's a team. It's a matchup of two teams who, when we're getting into week 15 and week 16, we're gonna, as long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, if he's not, that changes everything for the Rams. And I do question whether or not he'll be able to hold up with this back injury, because back injuries are tough for 37-year-old quarterbacks. But if he's healthy, these are two teams that should make some really good football, and this should be a really good football game. All right, the Sunday night game, Ravens at Bills. I don't have to say much about this game, honestly. You guys know who the best players are. These are two great teams. The Ravens are 1.5-point favorites. The only thing that surprises me, even though I have the Ravens as my number one team in the power rankings on my PhillyVoice.com power rankings, the Bills never lose at home. the Bills are almost unbeatable at home. So surprises me a little bit that the Ravens are 1.5 point favorites. But all you need to know about the Ravens is this: they basically brought everybody back on defense. They fixed their defense at the halfway mark last year. And over the last 8 games of the season, last half of the season, they were second to the Eagles in total yards and points scored on defense. So they had the number 2 defense. They brought everybody that they wanted back, and they added Jair Alexander, a very talented cornerback who just struggles to stay healthy, but it's week 1. They added him. So their defense is elite. No question about it. Their quarterback is elite. No question about it. They're running their offensive line, running it. I mean, the Ravens are about as close to the Eagles, matching them talent for talent as there is. They just don't have the wide receiver talent that the Eagles have. But I would say I think that they've probably got more secondary talent between Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Williams, Jair Alexander. I mean, they've got Kyle Hamilton. I'm sorry, Jair Alexander and Nate Wiggins, who played well. You could probably give the Ravens the nod in the secondary over the Eagles, but those two are the most talented 53-man rosters in the league. And after that, I think there's a little bit of a drop off. I like the Bills. The Bills are collectively better than their individual parts, and that a lot of that has to do with Josh Allen being able to lift that offense because it doesn't have a bunch of great playmakers. And Sean McDermott is an excellent defensive coach. They also don't have you don't look at their defense and say, oh, this is a top 3 guy and this is a top 3 guy, but they make it work and they are almost unbeatable at home, which is why it surprises me a little bit that the Ravens are 1.5 point favorites. But any team can win this game. And at the end of the day, the Ravens are number 1 in my power rankings for a reason. I think they're going to be really, really good this year again. Monday night game, Vikings at Bears. Kind of wish that this was the Lions-Packers was the Monday night game, but I get it. There's excitement. There's intrigue about the Bears with Ben Johnson, with Caleb Williams, with all of the moves that they made in the offseason. There's also intrigue with the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings are going to be a tough team no matter what, even if J.J. McCarthy stinks, because the Vikings are very good in the trenches. They understand what the Eagles have known for years, and some other teams, is that if you're strong on the D-line and strong on the offensive line, you can overcome some deficiencies. You know, if your quarterback isn't a top 3 quarterback, you can deal with that. So we'll see what McCarthy is. Now, you can't have a bad quarterback. So if he's bad, then it won't matter. But if he's okay and decent and he's got a great coach in Kevin O'Connell, then the Vikings will be pretty good because we know they have a great defensive coordinator in Flores, and they have a defense that's got some pass rushers. They added Isaiah Rodgers on the back end. I mean, this is a very, very tough defense to play against, so I wouldn't be surprised if this new Bears Ben Johnson offense doesn't just hit the ground running against this Vikings defense. The Vikings are 1.5 point favorites. Vikings will be fun to watch as the year goes on, but only if McCarthy improves, because their backup quarterback is Carson Wentz. So if McCarthy gets hurt, or if he stinks and Carson Wentz is in, I don't think the Vikings become an intriguing team anymore. Maybe the Eagles fans for Schadenfreude purposes, but otherwise they really need J.J. McCarthy to progress, stay healthy, move the ball, figure out ways to get it to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Watch for Tyler Hockenson. He'll have a nice bounce back year. Remember, he was on IR to start last year. He didn't play. He was coming off the knee injury. But Hawkinson's a really good tight end. And listen, the Michigan quarterbacks, they throw to their tight ends. McCarthy will, as a rookie or a first-year quarterback, will probably try to get the ball to his safety valve. So I think TJ Hawkinson can have a really big year. And the Bears, we'll just see. They made all these moves. It is all about Caleb Williams. Can he function and do what's being asked of him to do within the Ben Johnson offense? They have really good weapons. And listen, I'll just tell you this. This is a conversation for like week 8, 9, 10, or 11 if things aren't going well for Caleb Williams. But the Bears really love their backup, Tyson Bagent. And Bagent has played well in the few times he's been asked to go in there and play. I mean, this is a kid who, this is the biggest underdogs, one of the bigger underdog stories in the year if he ever winds up becoming a starting quarterback for the Bears. I think he went to Shepherd College, if I'm not mistaken. If you're not familiar with Bagent and his story and his father's love for pro wrestling and things like that, it's really funny. They love the kid in Chicago. He's got an arm. He can make some plays. Yeah, he went to Shepherd. He's a really interesting story. And listen, if it doesn't work out with Caleb Williams, I don't think Ben Johnson is going to be afraid to give the ball over to Tyson Bagent and see what he can do with all the weaponry that the Bears now have. So Vikings 1.5 point favorites should be a good one. A nice little NFC North battle on Monday night. All right, it's time for my 3 locks. I'm sorry, I meant to go back and look and give you guys my record from last year. It was a winning record. It was probably around 65, 66%, if I recall, but I'll get that information for the next one. But for this one, for week 1, I like the Raiders getting 2.5 over the Patriots. I don't know if the Raiders are going to win, but I can definitely see this being a 1-point game. I can see the Raiders winning by a field goal and just outright covering altogether, or losing by 1 and covering the 2.5. I just don't know that the Patriots are ready to be rubber stamped as a win. And I think the Raiders are going to figure out a way with their running game and to keep it close anyway. So this game could be very close. It wouldn't shock me if they could pull out a win by a field goal. I don't like the Raiders overall, but these are 2 teams that are probably in the bottom 5 or 6 of the NFL right now. I already alluded to it. I'm going to take the Dolphins getting 1.5 in Indianapolis. I just don't know about the Colts right now. And I think this is the time where you want to be on the Dolphins before all the injuries settle in, before all the drama that tends to happen in that franchise. I think week 1, Tua healthy is a pretty good bet to go in there. Give them the one. I think that they'll win that game outright, actually. And then I like the Titans to cover the 8.5 against Denver. Can Denver win that game by 2 possessions? 9 or more? Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't shock me, but I think the Titans are going to surprise some people. I think Cam Ward's impact and that offensive line being better is going to help them move the ball and probably make them a little bit more of a surprising team. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Cam Ward put the ball down the field a couple of times and make some big plays to Ridley, to maybe Lockett, Ayumunor, who we talked about, and maybe take the Broncos by surprise a little bit. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they can keep it close, and I'm taking them to cover the 8.5 versus the Broncos. This was a long show, man. I went on and on, but I really wanted to give you guys a preview, not only of the week 1 matchups, but what to expect from these teams this year. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please enjoy your football. That's going to do it for week 1 of the Inside the Birds NFL preview show. Catch you on the next one.